Good afternoon, everybody. You're all very welcome to our webinar, My Mental Health Getting Ready for Winter, in partnership with Mental Health Ireland. My name is Cillian, and I am working with Midwest ARIES, and I'll explain a little bit about who Midwest ARIES are in a second or so, and explain about the format of today's webinar as well, if you're joining us for the very first time. So today on our webinar, we'll have some great panelists discussing today's topic, and some discussion points will be talking about tips and tools that can help us during the winter months to mind our mental health and well-being. We'll look at the effects of reduced sunlight and what we can do to help boost our mood, and then we'll look at maybe self-care and routine that people can do for themselves in their own lives during the winter months as well. So a little bit about Midwest ARIES before I get on with introducing the panelists. We are the Recovery Education Service based here in the Midwest. We cover Clare, Limerick and North Tipperary. We have workshops online, face-to-face, self-paced courses and lots of resources available, and I'll have more information at the very end of the webinar on that. With today's format of the webinar, it's 1 hour. There'll be plenty of time for discussion throughout our panel, but if you do have a question during the webinar itself, there is a button at the very end of your screen, which is a Q&A button. So if you want to even preload some questions now, or even during the webinar, you're more than welcome to start putting them in now or later on during the webinar itself. So this will also be recorded for our YouTube channel, our Midwest ARIES YouTube channel, and it'll also be on our Wellness Panel podcast as an audio. So that'll be uploaded by the end of the week as well if you want to rewatch or forward on to anyone as well. So that'd be great. So that's a little bit about the setup of the webinar, and just a big thank you to Mental Health Ireland as well for the ongoing partnership with these webinars. It's very much appreciated. So I'm just going to invite the panelists to turn on their mic and turn on their cameras, and we'll get going with the webinar. I'm just going to stop the share as well for this. So welcome Sarah, Mike and Claire. Mike, I might come to yourself. You just want to do a quick intro with yourself. Thanks a million.
Yes, Cillian. Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Mike O'Neill. I'm manager of the service here, Midwest ARIES, and we're the Recovery Education Service here in the Midwest. Thanks, Cillian.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Claire, I'll come to yourself next. Thank you.
Thank you, Cillian. My name is Claire Flynn. I'm the Development Officer with Mental Health Ireland, and I cover Limerick, Clare and North Tipperary, and that's why.
Perfect. Thanks a million, Claire. Great to have you on. And Sarah.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. I'm a clinical nurse specialist and I work as part of the Recovery and Wellbeing programme for the acute services in the University Hospital Limerick.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Sarah. Great to have you on as well. So we'll get started with the first couple of questions anyway. Mike, I might come to you first on this one, if that's all right. So the first question is, what are some common mental health challenges people face during the winter months?
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. And I suppose I'm going to be personal here because I've often used the phrase, not just on this for today, but quite frequently. And as I would say, the darkness is my enemy. And I struggle over the winter period, you know, where the evenings draw in. Yeah, and there can be benefits to that as well, but yeah, and it is that, and I suppose the risks are the wet. It can be miserable. It can be, you know, we get a lot of rain here in the Midwest, and you know, people can isolate more. You know, you might even see your next door neighbor for months, and that can happen. You know, so, and I think isolation is one of the known risk factors for mental health challenges. So yeah, and some people, I think, feel it more than others, you know, whereas I suppose when we look at seasonal effect, people who are affected with the change in seasons, I think, while yes, it's true of all seasons, I think there's more people negatively affected throughout the winter months. Yeah. Thanks, Cillian.
Thanks, Mike. Claire, would you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a challenging time for people, you know, and you know, when we think of how our society is structured, you know, today and this week, you know, loads of people are going back to school and stuff like that, and there's all the stresses that come with that, and do you know what I mean? And you know, everyone's routines, you know, anyone who has children, or their routines will change, or people are starting new routines and things like that. So that in of itself, I think, can bring on challenges for people, and trying to cope with change, or trying to cope with the cost of things and different things like that. But yeah, they like the darkness, the fact that we're going to have much shorter days, there's less opportunity to get sunlight in, and the impact that sunlight can have on us, like it causes a chemical reaction, we get our vitamin D, you know what I mean, which helps to give us energy, and we don't have as many opportunities for that. And maybe like sometimes we don't feel like it either. Sometimes I do like going home and just pulling the curtains closed and make myself a bit cozy, you know what I mean, on a day. And I'm lucky I have the opportunity to do that as well, and I have the space to do that. So the way it can affect people can be from the minor things, I suppose, or from the smaller things of it's just horrible weather, it's just darker for longer, shorter days, all those things. And then, like Mike is saying, for some people it can be a real, a much bigger challenge in terms of mind and their mental health, the mind and their overall well-being. And I suppose for me, I would tend to think about it in terms of maybe how could I support somebody, maybe, do you know what I mean? How could I assist somebody if I knew family member or a friend or something like that, or a colleague who I knew was maybe particularly affected? That'd be like, well, how can I support them maybe, or how can I help them to support themselves through what could be quite a difficult time for them?
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Claire. Sarah, I might come to yourself next on the question. Thank you.
Hi, Cillian. Yeah, I suppose I could just agree with what everybody on the panel is saying. And I suppose coming from my experience of working in the mental health services, I think even your question, what are some of the mental health challenges people face during the winter months, even acknowledging that in itself is significant. Knowing that seasonal change can trigger a change in our mood, and that it can bring on, and I know there's a spectrum, we spoke about that in terms of how intense people can experience the sadness that the darker days can bring, or experience, or having those shorter daylight hours, and that can be very significant, and for some people where they experience that very severely, and for others it may be experienced less so, but it still brings with it its challenges. I know Claire tipped on there as well, the change in the routines, and I think that's significant as well. It's that adjustment, isn't it, and preparing for some of the challenges that a new season can bring, and that can have even with things like changing out the different clothes we'll be wearing, or thinking about the different foods we'll be eating, and all the change that can bring, and people can internalize that in it can bring a lot of stress, because there's a lot of expectation on people, or planning and organization, and there can be a financial element that the panel have touched on as well with that. I think as well, I suppose for a lot of us as well, our immune system can be under more pressure as well in the winter months. And as we know, our physical well-being is heavily linked with our mental well-being as well. So, and I think as well, we touched on, that piece around isolation, which does seem to be more significant in the winter months, whereby there's less, we even see less people out walking. We just see less people, we're rushing around more because we might have more, where if all the schools are back, or if people are working, and I suppose there's less, for some people there may be just less contact, or even just visually seeing less people out and about, and I think as well, even just experiencing the colder weather, that the weather is colder, and our own body temperature is decreasing, that can impact us as well in terms of the foods we eat, or how we can feel in ourselves. So there's lots to consider, and I think even acknowledging that, yes, I am going to be challenged, maybe physically, maybe mentally, even in terms of our sleep, and maybe we can get into that a bit more later. But that sleep disturbance, or that changes to our sleep pattern, because our sleep cycles are impacted, because we have less daylight hours. All those things can absolutely challenge our mental well-being. So there's a lot to consider, and there's a lot to, I suppose, to be aware of for ourselves. So it's a good opportune. It's an opportune time, I suppose, to reflect and think about how facing these winter months might impact me, and what has seasonal change done for me in the past, and is this something that maybe might impact me again, or what might I need to think about, and that might help us then to figure out maybe what tips or tricks might work for us going forward into the winter months.
That's brilliant, Sarah. And that's the beauty of this webinar, to get people prepared and knowing and aware of the challenges that may come ahead. So hopefully this will benefit people. And that was a really good, I suppose, explainer of what you said there. Different aspects, looking at your mood, the change of season, the change of weather, everything. It was really good. So Mike, I know you have a hand up there if you want to come in.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just what you know, following on from what was Sarah saying. So even in a clinical role, you know, you can you know, the observations are there, and I suppose for me, because I know I naturally dip during the winter, and as much, which we will look at, how can we prepare or how can we counteract it? And I think for me, I suppose it's knowing what's coming and the dread that comes with the knowing. That can be actually harder sometimes than actually getting through, you know, the cold, dark, wet nights, you know, in the middle of winter. And I know, I suppose here in Ireland, for me, it's one of those things I've grown up with. And for me, it's the first alarm bell of the end of the summer. It's the Rose of Tralee Festival. That kind of, it's back to school, you know, when now, you know, change is coming. And it's kind of, I know it's coming, but when you see things in front of you that mark it, you know, so, and that actually starts kind of for me, that kind of, oh no, things are changing in a negative way. And even though realistically, we don't really get dark evenings until the end of October. But like, you're looking at the third week, in my head, it's only the third week in August. And I'm saying, oh my God, I'll never get through the winter. You know, so it's that anticipation of, this is going to be bad. Oh, I'm dreading this. Whereas sometimes it's about looking at the reality and breaking down, well, what does the winter look like? And we'll probably chat about that in a minute as well. So sometimes there's the reality, but then there's the dread, you know, that goes with the reality. Thanks, Cillian.
Thanks, Mike. We might stay with you as well, because we might do the follow-up question. Just what can we do to help ourselves during the winter months for our mental health? Any tips or tools? I know you kind of touched on a little bit there, so I'll stay with you there if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I suppose it's kind of, we use the CHIME framework here in work around, you know, what does personal recovery look like in mental health? And part of the CHIME framework, it's an acronym there, and obviously the H in the CHIME framework stands for hope. And what I tend to do is, it's like that, be aware that, right, it's the 31st of October when it really gets dark, you know, when the clocks change here and we lose that hour. But come Christmas, which is only 2 months, you know, so I hang my hat on that we shut down here for a Christmas break over the holiday period. And even returning to work in the first week in January, I can see extra light in the sky. So when we look at hope, hope for me is always hope. Hope is based on things will get better. Hopefully I'll win the lotto. Hopefully I'll have good health. Hopefully I'll see, you know, so if I hang my hat on that, it's that vision of the future, and it's based on hope. And so again, it's having those milestones set out in front of me that, yeah, if I can hang tough here now and I can get through this window as well as I can, then I can see those incremental shifts where, as I'm reaching those milestones, my mood is actually lifting. And it's like the 1st of February, you know, St. Bridget's Day here in Ireland. It's quite significant in our, I suppose, Celtic and Christian traditions. But it's also that you can almost see that extra, it's bright until 6 o'clock in the evening. And that's the beginning then of that stretch out. And for me, that's the piece that I hang on to.
Thanks. That's really good. I like the milestones piece, Mike. That's really important. So yeah, great stuff. Sarah, will I come to yourself just on the follow-up question? What can people do to manage their or mind their mental health? Thanks.
Absolutely. And I suppose just to I suppose just listening to Mike there, and he was talking about, and you know, it's funny when you listen to other people what it can bring up for you. And it's just, Mike, when you said you know, the going back to school, starting it all again, you know, and actually for me sitting here listening to that, it was so it actually really touched me, because I was thinking, gosh, you know, I can actually sense the rising the rising kind of worry in me, even thinking the back to school back and you know, just that language even that we use even with each other, and I suppose even in our own minds as well. It's kind of, we're getting back into it now, and this is over, and we have to getting back into our routines. And it's just this, as like Mike was saying, that anticipation of all this change happening, and expectation, and planning. And it definitely struck me in all the things that I have to prepare for, the things that I have to do. And I think it must be as well, definitely that feeling I had about maybe when I was younger about the going back to school bit. And although we're for those that were, I suppose, lucky enough for school to be a happy place and a nice place to be, and to have good memories of that, it can still be, with all change, with things changing and new challenges coming, it can still be hard anticipating all those things. And I suppose for me, it's very much around just being aware of that. And sometimes it might be just a case of going with that, just saying, yeah, I do feel, noticing how I'm feeling, and maybe just sitting in that, and that's okay. And I mightn't always have the answers to everything that I might be facing next week or the week after, with different things that might be happening. But even knowing this is what I'm feeling, and actually that's okay, because there's lots of change happening, and there's more expectation going to be placed on me, and I might feel a little bit more under pressure, or I might feel more stressed in the next week or two before things might settle down a bit, and before I find my rhythm a little bit. And while I adjust to the changes that winter brings, whatever that might look like for any of us. For me, it's very much about knowing that, and acknowledging that that's what I might feel like for a while, and that's okay. And I suppose for some of us, it might be writing down what that might look like. Maybe even just jotting down what are the concerns I have, or what might be a little bit hard, and it might be, and what am I looking forward to, or what might be a new thing. What has helped me in the past, or what tends to come up at this time of year, what are the things I have to think about. And I suppose that kind of lends into then, and I know we might touch on this later on, is that routine, or that winter routine that we might need to start thinking about and start putting together. And sometimes I think when people have to put kind of a schedule together, or routine together, that in itself can seem like a lot, and overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be complete the first week of September. It can be something we can start looking at, making a start, thinking about it, getting something down on paper. For some people, that might be helpful. I know that I find that makes me feel like I have a little bit more control over what needs to be done, or what might be going on. And actually, just here in the hospital recently, somebody is a person here using our services that is experiencing mental health challenge at the moment, and they said something that's kind of stuck with me, and I thought it was so interesting. And they said they know the things that help them, and sometimes they don't have the motivation to do them, but then that they thought, well, actually, I'll just have to do them anyway. And they came to the realization that I don't have the motivation, or particularly the interest on going for that stroll, or making myself something, nutritious that'll, help me feel better, but I'm going to do it anyway. So they weren't going to wait for the motivation. They were just going to do it. And I thought that was really interesting, because sometimes we don't feel like doing things and we put them off. Whereas this person was saying, actually, they don't often feel like doing these things, particularly during the winter months, but they do it anyway, because they know it's what will keep them going, and they know it's what's good for them. I suppose that touches a little bit into resilience, doesn't it? And staying resilient through the winter months. And that kind of, I suppose, links in with the CHIME acronym that Mike alluded to there as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts at the moment.
That's excellent, Sarah. And I like that piece there that you just mentioned about, I suppose, the person who had no motivation, and just doing the hard stuff will have I suppose, and they're not feeling it, will have a positive impact on them in the moment and going forward as well. And even what you mentioned about the positive spin on the winter months, about what am I looking forward to, asking yourself, rather than looking at the doom and gloom of the weather or whatever it may be. So I really liked that piece as well. So Claire, I'll come to yourself now, if that's all right.
Yeah, I suppose just in listening to Mike and Sarah talk, and I've had a couple of different thoughts, and one of my favorite sayings is, how do you eat an elephant? Because sometimes something can seem so large, can be looming so large over me, or I might be getting overwhelmed by I have so much to do, or in my head thinking I have so much to do. So for me, breaking it down into smaller pieces, or not looking too far ahead sometimes, helps me. So, thinking, okay, I'm only going to look to the end of this week. I'm not going to look at beyond next week. What can I do this week? That can really help me sometimes. And also I saw another saying, and I know I'm so grateful for these sayings, but don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Is that the right saying? I'm not even sure if I'm saying it right, but it's that sort of idea of, like Sarah is saying, of coming up with a plan, maybe, of things maybe to look forward to, or things to do, like, maybe getting a little bit of physical exercise every day, the effect, as I said earlier, the impact of getting out and into sunlight. I know it won't be sunny, but daylight, I suppose, maybe is the correct word, and the impact that can have on us, and finding ways to do that. It doesn't, even if you say to yourself to come up with a plan and say, okay, I'm going to go for an hour's walk every day at 10 o'clock in the day, and then you find, actually, I don't actually have a lot of motivation for an hour's walk at 10 o'clock, but do 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It's sort of do what you can with what you've got. And even doing a little bit is better than doing nothing at all. And, and coming up with plans is great. And if all the plans don't work out, that's fine too. You can change your mind about stuff. You can say, okay, because I can definitely be one that if I'm planning something new, I'll go and buy everything to do with it, and I'll go 150% into it. And then after a couple of weeks, I'm burnt out from it. Do you know what I mean? Or I'm disappointed because I said I was going to do it 5 days a week and I only managed to do it one day, and then I get disheartened by it all, So, but at the same time, I'm learning that that's okay. Keep going with it. If I do it only 1 day a week, at least I'm doing it. And I might get to my aim of 5 days a week, down the road. Because even doing it, I find in a little way, and studies do show this as well, my motivation is low. Even doing 5 or 10 minutes of the thing actually can really help build up that motivation to start to do it a bit more as well. So, and another thing that comes to mind as well is, because everyone is so different, and for anyone who maybe looks to the winter as just something they have to get through, and maybe they haven't in the past come up with a strategy for themselves, say, or whatever, because they may not know what does work. They may, so it might be that this winter might be a period of discovery in terms of, okay, I'm going to try out maybe some things. I'm hearing things today that maybe I'm going to give them a go, and just reflecting on that, and then using that information to support ourselves as we go through it. Over through this, and then I suppose, like, reaching out for support. We don't have to do any of these things on our own. A good motivator can be, if I am going to go for a walk or something, then is there someone I can ask to come and knock on my door and say, come on, let's go for 15 minutes, or if there's an online course that we're going, if someone else is going to do it as well, that might be a motivator for us to engage with it a bit more as well. And again, then you're recognizing, like Mike is saying, winter might be from, say, like October to whatever, but actually it doesn't get really, really dark until much later, in October. So we do have long enough days, maybe hopefully up to that point. It's just day by day they get shorter, and then that period of time doesn't last forever either. It is a short period of time, and I definitely love that feeling of when we're coming up to St. Bridget's Day, when we're coming up to the end of January, looking forward to springtime, do you know what I mean, and all that brings, and it brings that period of change. So having that hopeful feeling of, I'm going to get there, I'm going to see that as well, and look forward to that hopeful feeling as well. Yeah, so so many different things, and everyone's so different. So it'll be about figuring out what works for you. Can you motivate yourself? Can you support yourself? But are there other resources you can pull in, like people or places or things that can support you as well to get through it?
Thanks, Claire. And I like the piece you're saying about the period of discovery over the winter months, maybe to see what you do like or what you can delve into as well. So that's really good. So thanks for that. Mike, did you have your hand up there? Do you want to come in? Yeah.
Yes, Cillian. Yeah, and I suppose when we're talking about darkness and light, and I think the importance of it, have a look at the environment we're in as well, and what type of lighting, because, and I know when I was a child, I grew up in a house that in the kitchen, we had a fluorescent tube, this big long thing, and it was depressing. It gave great light, but it was actually depressing. And I know a few years ago when I suppose, green energy and the importance of doing the right thing for the environment as well. And we were changing from the old incandescent, filament light bulbs into, CFLs and, LEDs and all of that. And I said, I'm going to be good. And I went out and the first 2 light bulbs I bought, and they were quite expensive. And when I brought them home and put them in as replacements and turned them on, it was this blue light. It was cold. It was. And I said, I've paid money for these, but I couldn't live with them. So I took them back out and replaced them with the old bulbs. So again, it's kind of, well, what can we do to mimic warmth or that feeling of? So it's one of the things I ensure. Well, yes, the house now is fully fitted out, trying to keep, the electricity bill as low as possible. But every bulb, I make sure that it says warm light. And I can remember also in the same way, having this feeling. I remember I've seen, and when new cars, a lot of them transitioned into, this brighter but LED type headlight, but it's this bluey color. And first time I saw this, I said, "Oh, that's interesting." Geez, I could never drive a car like that because I couldn't. It's just so cold looking, So it's kind of light can make light in the absence of light, or even the wrong type of light, can make us feel. We can respond with a feeling to that. Yeah, and it was just something that popped into my head. Now, and I have one of these here, and this was sold, and I can't remember, is it Aldi or Lidl, giving them a shout out. But in that, this was because it began this in Scandinavian countries, this for people what they call SAD, that seasonal affective disorder, to mimic, actual sunlight. Claire mentioned the importance of vitamin D earlier. So it was to mimic that body response. But yet, when I plugged in this light, which said, this is going to be great, I can have this on in the office, and I will be getting all the full whack benefits, and I'll get through the winter. And the minute I turned it on, it was that blue, cold light. It is here. Anybody wants, a free light? But I can't use, because visually, this is affecting me more than what the perceived benefits may be, So, yeah, that's it. Thanks,
Thanks, Mike. Claire, do you want to come in? I know you're going to come in on that topic, I'd say. Yeah, work away.
Yeah, and it is that idea of, like you're saying, Mike, our environment. Do you know what I mean? And it's how can we make, because we're probably going to spend more time wherever we're living or working, or or with other people. So for ourselves, like, how can we make our environment more inviting, more comforting, more supportive? And that can be in so many different ways. And and I know that as well, because I do want to acknowledge that winter can bring financial stress for people as well. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, keeping the place warm, and we associate the heat and the warmth with cozy as well. You know what I mean? And I do want to acknowledge that as well. But like, how can I make my space nice? Do you know what I mean? Can I throw in more blankets, maybe more cushions? Do you know what I mean? Or any sorts of a way. But one thing that I was talking to someone about yesterday was, going out for a walk is great, right? And being out in nature, when we go on a walk in nature, doubles the benefits in terms of our mental health, and studies show that. But also, if we look at, just say on our TV, if we put on images of nature or videos of nature, and we sit with that for a while, it can mimic the benefit of that in our mind as well. So it might not be possible on a given day because of the weather, or because of our abilities, or whatever, or it might be just too cold, to what that we want to go out, but at the same time we want to feel like maybe we're in a bit of nature. So and I know that what is it, BR, is it, the BR sets and stuff like that, they've started to use things like that in places like care homes for some people who are not physically able, or are not able to get out and about, and the impact it has on a person's well-being is actually quite good, even though it's not reality, that sort of virtual reality. So mimicking that on our TVs and stuff like that can be really good, or on our laptops. And even some visualization as well sometimes, in terms of helping us to feel cozy, helping us to feel that we're out maybe walking in nature. But our environment, again, is so important. And it might be your bedroom, like you mightn't have control over the entire house that you're in. So what can you do to make your bedroom cozy? You know, and those lights, Mike, when you're talking about that, because I love an overhead light can be great, but you know, when I want to feel cozy, it's all about the lamps. Do you know what I mean? Having that lovely orangey sort of glow, but having it not a bright light on. So, you know, as you said, even maybe sometimes even just changing the light bulbs can create an impact of coziness in a house with lamps, and then, you know, having different lamps around the place can make us feel cozy. We can sort of, in some ways, when we think about us as nature-based beings, you know, to want to sort of hibernate or to want to sort of become a bit cozy can maybe feel a bit instinctive to us as well. But it is important to balance that, you know, if we do feel that instinct alongside what other challenges maybe might face, but to balance that with making sure that we don't over isolate, like we were saying earlier, you know, to stay connected. And sometimes the way we might stay connected with ourselves might be through meditation or journaling, but also, you know, using our mobile phones or our internet or whatever to stay connected to other people. If we're not able to do that physically, in person is always best. But if what a person can do is a WhatsApp video chat with somebody or a phone call or a text message, whatever it might be, staying connected is important, however you do it.
Thanks, Claire. Mike, do you want to come in there on that? Yeah, work away.
Yeah. I love what Claire said there, and it reminded me when you talk about the importance of imagery, even if you're not there. Because there's a lady I know, and she's a fan of the great masters and painters, and you know, and like, so we're all aware of, you know, some of us when we travel, we go into the local galleries or wherever we may be and to look at paintings. But because everybody knows her love of painting, people have given her gifts over the years of what you would call like the coffee table book with these fantastic images. So unless you're intentional and sit down and go through it and say you can ooh and ah, and then you'll put it down and you won't look at it for quite some time. But what she's done is for every morning for breakfast, she has where she sits for breakfast, right in front of her, she has like a little mini easel stand, and she goes through her books, but she sits the book up on it. And every morning when she sits down to have her breakfast, she turns the page to a new painting. So she's starting with an image that's of something that she enjoys. And so while she's having her breakfast, having her coffee, she can study in it, and it sets her mood for the day. And it's kind of, sometimes, as you said, well, there's nothing I can do about the black. There's nothing I can do about the wet. There's nothing I can do about it, but I can lift my mood by, you know, if you're intentional. And so it's that mindfulness piece as well, by going through the painting and studying it.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah, do you want to come in there as well on that?
Yeah, definitely. Just listening to Claire and Mike there, and yeah, it just all makes so much sense, doesn't it? And it's about, you know, say and actually just saying, actually, I'm want to do something kind for myself. You know, it's worth doing something kind for myself. It's worth me doing something that I know I'm going to enjoy. I want to do something nice for myself, and you know, doing, like, setting that time aside and not allowing ourselves to get too bogged down in all the other things that need to be done for other people, or other things, or sometimes we look for other things to fill space, by doing things for, whether it be for the house or if we're working there, or for other people, or if we're caring for people, or if we're parents. And actually it's about saying, what I think it's just, you know, setting, if even it is like what Mike was saying, that lady, when she's having her breakfast or that cup of tea, that 5 or 10 minutes of that space or that time for ourselves, and just to sit with ourselves and kind of think, well, you know, where am I at now? What's going on for me now? Where might that be coming from? What might be good for me today? And just kind of, sometimes I think we can, particularly in the winter months, we can push ourselves, and we don't kind of take heed or take stock and take that moment. And we can think about all the things that just need to be done, and it feels like we're chasing and chasing, and we're always so busy, and sometimes we can reach that burnout. And I think that's even more intense in the winter months because there's less time. Sometimes it feels like there's less time to get everything done. But I think, taking heed, or taking that moment to think about, how am I right now? As I'm sitting here, what's coming up for me? What am I thinking about? What am I feeling? What's happened today? I think that can be really important in terms of, saying, well, actually, maybe doing, when we were talking about that bit of exercise, and I know sometimes even that word can be so hard for people to even associate themselves with, because they think, I don't have time, or, if we might feel like physically we can't do it for lots of different reasons. Or because of our situation. But sometimes we can reframe that, and it could be like maybe movement. Maybe I can walk around the kitchen 20 times, or if I can go up and down the stairs 10 times. There might be other things, or sit up and down off the chair, or do other types of movement at home. And it doesn't have to be with all equipment, or we don't have to have internet connectivity to be, linking in or paying for these other courses. And if we can, great. And if they work for you, fantastic. But there can be other ways to do things. I know there was a lady here, and she had 2 cans of beans, and she used to do her workouts every day at the table, and she looked fantastic. And it was about saying, this is for me, and I figured out a way to do it, and she did. And it was just as good as any weights that other people had at home. So yeah, I think for me, but very much what's coming out, what people are saying is what can I do for myself to make things a little bit easier today? And it mightn't, sometimes people might feel they don't even have time to think, to reflect every day, but it might be like, maybe once a week, I'm just going to take that moment out to say, how has my week gone, or how's the day gone, and what might I like, what changes can I make tomorrow? Maybe a bit more enjoyable, a bit lighter, a bit easier, or is there some change I can do, or is there somebody I can talk to that might be able to do something that can help me out, or to make things a little less challenging. So yeah, I think being able to that communication with ourselves and communicating with other people to kind of help those winter months feel, and for some people maybe just feel a little bit more tolerable, so that we can manage them a bit better. Yeah.
That's great, Sarah. I like those self-reflection questions. And like you said, it doesn't have to be every day. It could be once a week as well, just for us to take time to see where we're at. So thanks for that. That was really good. Mike, you have your hand up there if you want to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. And I suppose just stuff is emerging in the conversation, and I suppose and I'm going back to the start of COVID-19 and the lockdown, and that psychological impact I think it had on a lot of people. And some of it was, I suppose, even there was an impact consciously and even unconsciously that people weren't aware of it. But I know, because it's come up with both Sarah and Claire mentioned around that self-kindness and that self-compassion. And I suppose my comfort when I went into lockdown was food. And I put up 20 pounds because all I was doing was sitting. And eventually I got to the stage, and I'm going back to probably this time last year, where I just felt, I was just rotten. My sleep pattern was gone. I had no motivation. I was after being overeaten for years. And I just said, oh, I just need to do something. And as part of, I suppose, well, what can we do at this time of year where we're facing that trade? So, and for me, it was, I'm going to commit to getting out in the morning before work for a few minutes walk. And eventually that stretched out to 20 minutes in the morning, and then come into work. Now I'm awake. Now I'm sharper, and it's kind of, and the hardest thing was making the decision, because that's all I've done over the year. And even over the Christmas, when there's traditionally extra sweets and food and, rich food, and, and I was consciously aware of, I'm going to mind myself. So, and that's all I did, was just those walks and watch what I was eating. So from September last year right up to the start of the summer, I was down 1 stone, making small changes. And what that gave me at the start of the summer then was the motivation. Well, now I'll do more because we have the bright evenings. And what I'm actually doing now is going out for cycles when I can on the bicycle and at the weekends. So because one thing leads to the other, and when you can see that little I'm actually getting something here. That was the motivation to move forward again and maybe do that little bit more. And I suppose what I'm trying to do now is actually cram before the winter because I won't be getting outside. But equally, how can I change track and maybe do a little bit more walk and still mind what I'm eating? It's getting, as we all know, when you shift, a few pounds, the extra pounds that you want, those are the really hard ones. But again, if you've gotten there, that's the motivation to continue. And it was just because I was rotten. So my sleep pattern has improved, my alertness has improved, and my physical strength has improved, and again, I'm getting old here as well, so, and it's all relative to our age as well. And it's just kind of, and it was only this one, but the hardest thing was making the decision. But also prior to that was having the awareness that, so that little bit of reflection, I'm actually gone into decline a little bit here. And I need to kind of, get myself back in the game because there is benefits, the health benefits and all that. We can stay at all of the obvious there, both mentally and physically. So I know facing the winter, I'm not as unfit. So this time, compared to this time last year, it'll even motivate me further because I've reaped the benefits of it, and I don't want that to slip. I want to hang on to it, and I want to keep going. Yeah, thanks, Cillian.
Super, thanks a million, Michael. Let Claire come in there. So you want to come in after Mike there? Thank you.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like reflecting on what Mike has said as well, and going back to what I said at the beginning, in terms of like maybe using it as a period of discovery, like the reflection piece. And reflection for me is just like sitting down thinking about, well, what happened today? You know what I mean? How did it make me feel? Because for me, food is definitely a comfort for me as well. Do you know what I mean? And, but at the same time, I reflect and I know about myself now that, okay, I might be reaching for the chocolate and stuff like that. And temporarily that might make me feel good. But I know that, later on, it's not going to make me feel good. So, use that feel like, so if I am doing something at the end of the day, if I am trying out something new, has it helped me to feel better or has it helped me to feel worse? And if it helps me to feel worse, then maybe I want to do less of it. So if it is, just say, if I use a bar of chocolate as an example, I mightn't want to eat the bar of chocolate every day. But if I have one bar of chocolate on a Saturday, that's not going to be, that can help me feel better, but it's not going to help me, it's not going to really impact me that much. But, if I'm doing something and I'm finding that it's having a positive impact on me, that it is helping me get through the winter, that it is helping me to have a bit of a higher mood, and, I want to do more of that. And it's true what Sarah was saying as well. So many times we can give so much of ourselves to so many things, but it's like anything, like, it's worthwhile doing, because overall what we're going to feel is feel better, we're going to feel healthier, we're going to feel more capable. And if we are someone who is like looking after someone else or has other responsibilities in the world, it's going to make it easier for us to be able to do those as well. You know what I mean? And I'm always saying that, I'm always trying to have the best day ever. Of course, it doesn't happen every day. Do you know what I mean? Not every, maybe every couple of months I have the best day ever if I'm lucky. But I want to try and achieve that for myself every day. And at this stage in my life, do you know what I mean? Like Mike is saying, I'm a bit further down the path, some people as well. I've learned things about myself. So I know at this stage, I absolutely know what will not help me, what will not support me. So I try and stay as far away from those as I possibly can. But it took me time to discover those. It took a bit of reflection. It took a bit of looking at what I was doing every day and how they're impacting me. Now I know, and now I can put those into good use and I can do what I know supports me. Some days it's easier than others, but, coming into winter, I know I'll go to food because I love that warm, comforting feeling from food and stuff like that. So I'm going to be trying to make sure that it's sort of healthier. Try and make sure it's maybe not, I love a good soup. So I'll try and make soups. So it's just about, I've learned what works for me rather than going for the chips and the burger, if you like. Do you know what I mean? feel equally as comforting. But later on or tomorrow, I'm going to be, God, why did I eat that? Do you know what I mean? That I know it's not going, because I don't want to put on loads of weight over the winter either. You know, I want to have that bikini body. Do you know, that sort of way? Well, it's not really a bikini body, but you know what I mean. I want, you know, when I'm coming into looking at wearing the shorts in the summertime, I want to feel like a butter man. But, you know, besides being like trying to be funny about it, it is just that looking after myself, include my nutrition, whatever way that is for me. And it, again, that period of discovery can be really, really important.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Claire. I'm just going to pause there, Sarah, before I come to you. If anyone has any questions, please do put them into the Q&A button there at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to the questions if we can. Sarah, I'll just come to yourself there. That's all right.
Thanks, Cillian. Yeah, I think, you know, that piece around controlling your winter appetite, it's so significant, isn't it? And what's that saying? I mean, like Claire now coming up with the sayings, but you know, the weather outside is frightful, but the food is so delightful. I've heard that a few times. And I think we've all fell into that. And I think, you know, historically, like culturally, you know, in Ireland, you're like loving the potatoes with all the butter and the lovely, like all the lovely sauces and all those lovely things that we absolutely look forward to and we should enjoy. But I suppose it's like, you know, I suppose physiologically, when we feel cold, our body wants food because that, you know, increases our metabolism and that warms us up. And I suppose it's that self-preservation mode that we fall into, that we just get hungrier quicker when, and we want those carbohydrate, quick filling foods to help warm us up and make us feel good. And I suppose it's hard always to make the right choices, but I suppose it's kind of comes back to a lot of the time we know the right things to eat and we have the information and we know the right choices that we should be making. And I suppose for me, it's just about getting a bit organized, because when we're more organized, we're less likely to reach for the easier, quicker option that may not be the best choice and things like that. But I suppose it's just being mindful of, the comfort that food can bring, but we need to balance that with getting into kind of good routines of eating as well as we can as much of the time. In as much of the time that we can as well. And that can be challenging when we're looking after other people. And, you know, when we spoke about that sometimes that the winter months can bring in extra challenges. And I kind of thought, you know, I suppose the flip side of that is that sometimes people may have been under a lot of pressure over the summer if they're caring for children or have a lot of people depending on them. And now that people maybe have children or teenagers in their home having returned to school, maybe they actually have a bit more time now to just take that time out and maybe focus on themselves a bit more and think about getting that kind of bit more structure into their day that often if we have people in our homes that are in school or in jobs that what the structure that brings with it. And that brings good opportunity to say, actually, you know, this week I'm going to set out you know, a bit of a plan. What kind of routine can we get into? What was it last winter that we kind of struggled with? What can we do about that now? And maybe that's something that we really can't take on our own either. You know, if we're living with other people, it might be, let's have a sit down tonight after dinner. We could spend 10 minutes thinking about, you know, what kind of, you know, a winter do I want to have? You know, what kind of things do I want to do? What kind of things do I feel might serve me well or might help me? And they don't have to be big things. I know Claire and Mike touched on that as well. It can be something quite small. You know, it might be actually by the time Friday comes, I really the thoughts of doing laundry. So I'm going to make Wednesday my laundry day. I don't know, whatever that might be. And you often hear people saying, you know, Monday is the day they change the sheets, or Tuesday is the day that they're going to do that. Yeah, I don't know, those 20 lunges, whatever it is. Or it might be, you know, Thursday is really tricky. I'm really busy on Thursdays. Maybe I can make something, you know, that will fill me, or if I do live with other people or I have family to look after, maybe there's a dinner I can make today for tomorrow and I'm just heating it up tomorrow. So it's just that planning, and sometimes it's just all those tips and tricks of those things that we've heard before, that we might have thought of before, but like Mike was saying, it's the hardest piece is actually doing it and committing to it and just, yeah, sitting down and actually thinking, yeah, what actually can I do in one thing each week and build on that. And I think the more you do those things then, and you see that actually that's having a positive effect on me or my family or whatever it might be, the more likely it is then we'll continue to do it, and you'll have more buy-in as well if you're relying on other people to help, if we can see the positive benefits that it can have. Yeah.
Great, Sarah. Thanks a million. Mike, you have your hand up, and then we'll just leave a question then in the Q&A button. So I'll come to yourself, Mike, and then we'll
Yeah,
go to the question.
perfect.
Thanks.
And I suppose I think it's just for us to be aware that, like, when we look at what's going on around us as well, when autumn is coming, that like it's a lot of plants, they'll either die off and they'll regenerate in the springtime through seeds, or like trees and that, they'll go into the dormant phase. And then there's some animals then who will stock up on food and they'll hibernate for the winter. So we are part of the natural world. It's not something else. So, and I think if we were probably to go back to our ancestors in, back in the Stone Age, maybe there was an element of that cramming as well, that I need to get through the winter. I need to put on fat, and so when we look at, it's almost like an instinct that we're going for, the fattier foods and, what we might perceive as unhealthy. But when we go back, originally, those things were probably about survival. And Rosemary here, who works in the office, and this is just an aside, when you look at, so rather than saying I'm depriving myself of something, we have a battle of wills here now that has turned into a competition. There's a filing cabinet just here on my right, and there is an unopened packet of chocolate biscuits that Rosemary brought in there. But neither of us will open them. And it's a daily battle of wills to see who will crack first. So rather than saying, I can't have chocolate biscuits, we've turned this into a fun, competitive thing to see who will break first, and open the biscuits. So sometimes if we can change something, and it's a bit like looking at the blackness of the winter, if we can try and change the way we look at something, very often it's a mindset. And that can become a battle with where, yes, that's the mind and its thought. When we look at CBT, managing our thoughts, because the response to our thought is the feeling. And that can happen in a millisecond. Oh, the roses are leaving, winter's coming. Oh, no, I'm dreading this. So I feel in response. And sometimes it's kind of to challenge that thoughting process as well into, right, it's going to be bad, but it's not as bad as I think it's going to be. And I'll manage this and look at different ways of managing it.
Thanks, Mike. It touches nicely onto the comments kind of question in the Q&A button there. So I'll just read it out there. When blended working isn't an option, I think perhaps holding over annual leave or shorter working year might be helpful. I found last winter very, very difficult getting up in the cold and dark and coming home in the dark. So any thoughts from anyone on that? Mike, do you want to come back in there again? Or Sarah, if you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'll go first on that.
Thanks, Cillian.
And that would be a thought pattern that I would have. And I know I do it backwards because I love the summer. So I save up on my annual leave in the main for over the summer months. And therefore, as a result of that, then I'm left with Monday to Friday, going to work in the dark, coming home in the dark. And so I'm completely dependent on the weekends. Thankfully, I have a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. But I tend not to keep days for, I'm going to build in. Ideally, I probably should be building in. I'm going to make sure maybe once a month over the winter months, I'm going to take a day off and plan it. And then that also comes back to the hope or something to look forward to, because now I'm going to have a long weekend. And if I build in a lot, so every month I could have, and you say, well, geez, over the 3 months, of the bleak of the winter, you're taking a chunk of holidays. Well, here we take Christmas time, so that's December out, so even to take a day in November and a day in January, that's only 2 extra days. And it might shorten the winter, but because I love the summer so much, I can't resist it. It's like it's like the packet of biscuits. I crack, but I crack every year and I take the days off. when I know I'm going to really enjoy it. Because for me to take a day off in the winter, well, what happens? It's going to be there in the morning, it's going to be there in the evening. What happens if it's, you know, lashing rain all day long? Then I'm saying, I took a day off for this. And I know we can get it in the summer, which we had a bad summer here, but it's that saying, it's managing the risk as well, you know, of that. Yeah, thanks, Gilly.
Cheers. Thanks a million, Mike. Claire, I'll just come to yourself, and then Sarah, I'll come to you after, and then we'll have our final question because we're coming close to the end there as well. So thanks a million. Cheers.
And for me, it's like, you know, like Mike is saying, you know, it might be possible for someone to hold over annual leave, do you know what I mean, over the winter, or they might be keeping their annual leave for when the kids are off school, or, you know what I mean, there could be all sorts of reasons. Or they might only be allowed to take their annual leave during August, or, you know, there's so many different reasons why someone mightn't be able to have to, you know, but if you can carry it over, absolutely. And you know, that thing of adding on a couple of days to bank holiday weekend, and then you're not using as many of your days, you know, making that weekend longer and things like that. But I think as well, it might be just about finding something to look forward to. You know what I mean? Whether that's, you know, maybe of a Friday evening, I'm going to, you know, we're going to sit down, we're going to watch a movie at home. Do you know what I mean? And pick a movie. And one thing I do love about the autumn and winter is that all the good shows tend to come back. Do you know? So my husband and myself, we say, oh great, that show is back now, so that's on the Tuesday night. So every Tuesday night we're going to sit down and we're going to watch that. And it's something small, but it's something I enjoy, it's something I look forward to. You know, or it might be for yourself, like planning something maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday, going out to a market or going for a walk or visiting friends or visiting family, something that you enjoy, whatever it is, going browsing the shops, whatever it is. But, you know, picking something maybe once a week to look forward to, because, you know, we do have to work, so many of us, you know what I mean, or we're looking after somebody all week or whatever it might be. So in the breaks that we have, what can I do to make the most out of the time that I have or the break that I have? And whatever, and again, whatever that might be. But and for some people, I know it's like they plan next year's holiday like in September, and they're saving for it, and every time they're putting a bit of money into the savings for it, they're thinking about that holiday next year, or, you know what I mean, they're planning different things. For some people, love Halloween and they love Christmas, so planning for Halloween gets them through it, then planning for Christmas gets them through it. Not everybody loves those, but, you know, it's about, I suppose, again, that thing of discovery of, you know, what are the small things I could do for myself, and big things. You know, you can plan for big things alongside that as well, that can help me to look forward, to feel that there's a bit of hope coming, that there's some nice things coming down the road for me, that I'm not thinking about, oh God, this weather is awful and I feel awful, but it'll distract me maybe a little bit from, you know, what's going on for me, and help me to feel a little bit better as well.
Cheers. Thanks a million, Claire. My last question was, what one piece of advice would you give to someone to best prepare themselves for the winter ahead? I think you might have covered that yourself in that, Claire. Are you happy enough, even what you kind of mentioned there? Yeah, you okay with that? And then Sarah, might come to yourself on that, if that's all right. And then Mike, and then we'll do the closing slides. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cillian. I think just even for that lady or that person, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, who felt before they start work it was dark, and then when they finish work it was dark. And I think as a healthcare provider, it's something that I can relate to a lot. And certainly, you know, for people who are working shift work and things like that, it's very, it really feels like you're getting up in the middle of the night and you're going home when it's dark. And yeah, that's really hard. It's not easy. And there isn't an easy solution to it, because it's you know, it's just part of, I suppose, the seasons, and you know, living in Ireland, and it just comes with I suppose what winter brings. I suppose from my own experience, and I suppose, as you know, and probably lends into your final question as well, Cillian, people who I work with and who face those challenges as well on their lunch break, I've noticed, particularly here in the hospital, even when it's raining, people are putting on, you know, they say there's no bad weather, there's just being badly dressed for the weather. And people are putting on their raincoats and they're putting on the hood, and they're going for that, for their lunch break, they're going for that 10-minute walk. They're going, and I'm sure, you know, these are people who are on their feet all day, and you know, or maybe some people in the hospital have desk jobs as well, but they're definitely putting one foot in front of the other, and they're actually just getting out there, yeah, for those daylight hours. And I suppose it probably feels like, you know, we spoke about the power of your environment and the impact the environment or the space you're in for lots of hours has on us, and maybe stepping outside of the office space you're in, or wherever it is you're working, even if it's only for those 10 or 15 minutes, if you know, for your break, And just having that time to yourself. And if there was a loop or somewhere you could walk to and walk back, and maybe done that maybe 2 or 3 times in the week, and maybe start with just doing one day, that might help. And it might just break the monotony of the day in, day out. When I come in, it's dark, and when I leave and go out that door again, God, it's still dark. So it might be just trying to use the daylight hours when they are there, irrespective of the weather, if it's at all possible. I notice that's what some people are doing here in the hospital. And it's the same faces I'm seeing as well. So there must be something good in it if the same people are going, they can see the benefits of it as well. And I know Claire touched on, doing something and having something to look forward to. And there was psychologists that I was listening to recently, and they were saying that there's 3 things that kind of inherently can help people to feel better. And one of those things is having something to look forward to. And I think it, as the panel were saying as well, it could be something that we're doing on Friday night. It might be I'm going to light the fire on Friday night, if that's something that people have, or you know what, I'm going to get into that cozy pajamas at 10 o'clock or whatever it is, and I'm going to put on that comedy or that movie or that film that I haven't looked at. Making time for ourselves, it might be, I'm going to have that shower, and I'm going to, whatever it is, use that nice shampoo that I've been saving. It doesn't matter. Whatever that might be for you, or it might be, somebody here in the hospital said one day that they find like changing their sheets and getting into bed with clean sheets, and they do that on Thursday or Friday, and they love that and they look forward to that. And sometimes it is about the little things, and it's about noticing and having the little things to look forward to, and actually noticing how they make us feel, and doing those things for us. And one thing I've done for myself is I've actually booked tickets for a comedy show in a couple of weeks' time in the dead of the winter. So I said, right, that'll make me laugh. If nothing else, I'll have something to laugh at, and that'll be something to look forward to. So I think it's managing our expectations as well, knowing that, there will be days when it's dark and it's dull all day and raining all day, but that's okay, because like Mike was saying, this too shall pass. And the seasons change, and the colors will change outside, and the brighter days will come. So it's just trying to make each day as good as you possibly can for yourself, and knowing that the brighter days are ahead as well.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Sarah. Mike, we'll come to yourself, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I suppose hope is something to look forward to, and I think even throughout a week, it's like as Claire was saying, those small things, 5-10 minute walk, but doing it for yourself. And I think the word I'll use here is be intentional in your thinking pattern around, I am doing this for me, I am doing this to benefit me, to get through the winter as best I can. And even if you do have the bar of chocolate midweek, wait until Sunday evening, before you go to bed, and just reflect then on the week and note all of the things that you did for yourself. Thanks, Cillian.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Mike. I'm just going to share slides here just with our upcoming events. Just thanks to the panel. Really great discussion between all of you. I really enjoyed it. So this is just some of our recovery education workshops. This is our online timetable. So you'll get sent this anyway in your learner pack at the end of the week. So you can either book on Eventbrite, midwestaries.eventbrite.ie, or you can email myself, Cillian.Keane@hsc.ie. With some upcoming workshops. This is face-to-face then. We are in the Scarf Library, we're in the Limerick City Library in September, and then Fines Library then in October. So that's the 3 workshops, or the couple of workshops that are upcoming. This is our self-paced course as well. So there's a range of different courses that we offer as well. So you'll get this again in your learner pack. So introducing occupational therapy, understanding acute mental health services, the perinatal self-care workbook, and I also have the perinatal self-care taking care of me self-paced course as well. Then the getting the best from my mental health appointment, and then the my self-care taking care of me as well. So they're all the self-paced courses that you'll get. And then the final piece then, Claire, this is just your email address if anyone wants to contact you after, just details there. And then the final piece then is where this will be recorded. It'll be up on our Midwest Aries YouTube channel and on our podcast on Spotify and iTunes or Apple Podcasts as well. So you'll be able to rewatch and take it all in again. And that's just some contact details for Mike, my colleague Margaret, and myself at the end there. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, which is now X, and then Instagram and YouTube as well. So that's it for me, I think, all the signposting stuff there. But just thanks to the panel. Thanks, Mike, Claire, and Sarah. Great discussion. You're lining up to get into our answers there as always is great. And hopefully you all enjoyed the webinar as well, the people that are attending over the last hour. So if you want to do a quick goodbye, everyone, or say a final word. Yeah, Mike, you want to come in?
Yeah, just again, interesting chat. And I suppose hopefully somebody just even, well, you enjoyed it in the first place and possibly had a takeaway that would help you through the dark of the winter. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah, if you want to come in. Quickly.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
And thanks to all the panelists today and to yourself, Cillian. I really enjoyed the discussion. And I'm taking away a lot of information for myself as well, and just reminders of things that I need to redo, reconnect with for myself. I hope people found it interesting and enjoyable. Thanks again.
Thanks, Sarah. And finally, Claire, I'll come to yourself.
Yeah, same. I found it so interesting and enjoyable myself. I learned quite a bit myself as well. And just for everybody, mind yourself, go easy, do it at your own pace. It can feel like a long winter, but with different things to look forward to, I think we've all learned lots over this discussion. So hopefully people have taken stuff from it that can support them going through.
Great. Thanks, Claire. See you all next month. Thanks a million.